There is a lot of Super Bowl buzz going around the air right now. The Super Bowl is officially upon us. Great news coming out of the NFL. A lot of coaches being hired, some press conferences that recently happened that give some great insight into this past season, as well as even the season prior. Things like what's going on with the defense. Was Brock Purdy always going to be the quarterback for the 49ers? The betting markets, what's going on with that? I'm seeing a lot of national pundits saying they're going with the Chiefs, but the books, they're telling us something different. We've got a lot to talk about. And with that being said, let's get into it, y'all. Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Ryan Tigey, back in action, live in front of a camera and a microphone. The Super Bowl, it's almost here. Some recent news I just saw, the San Francisco 49ers show up in Las Vegas this Sunday at 6 p.m., heading straight to the team hotel. I'm seeing a lot of things around the internet here that people are unhappy with this Super Bowl matchup. Why is that? I think a lot of it has to do with this being a rematch, first and foremost, and the Chiefs and the 49ers basically being dominant with over the past couple years. Patrick Mahomes has been to 6 straight AFC championships. They're also the defending champion as they won the Super Bowl last year. And then the 49ers, they have been to 4 NFC championship games just within the last 5 years. So I think a lot of it has to do with people tired of seeing winners win. I think you can compare that to the Tom Brady era when New England every single year was in the Super Bowl. So I understand some of it with people not being happy, but with my bias naturally with the 49ers, I'm fucking pumped. And if people don't want to watch the Super Bowl, don't watch the Super Bowl. Don't know if you saw, but the AFC and NFC championship games did numbers. A lot of eyeballs watch those games. The NFC championship game, the 49ers versus Detroit Lions, they had over 56 million viewers. 56 million. That's a lot of eyeballs watching that game. And I'm sure some of it had to do with Detroit Lions being a pretty big draw with their feel-good story. Are they actually going to do it? Are they going to go on a run? Well, that didn't happen. And the 49ers are a prominent NFL brand, one of the top brands in the NFL for being a historical franchise. So I think there's no better game than 49ers get a rematch of the 2019 Super Bowl, and they can get their revenge and finally get a Super Bowl ring that we all know they should. Also, what's kind of funny is this is the first Super Bowl in Las Vegas. And I bet Mark Davis isn't the most thrilled about the teams facing off in his stadium for the first Super Bowl ever hosted in Las Vegas. You have your biggest AFC West division rival in the Kansas City Chiefs facing off against your Bay Area arch nemesis, San Francisco 49ers. So I bet if you talk to Mark Davis privately, he'd be pissed about that. But I think, in my opinion, that makes it that much more sweeter that the 49ers have an opportunity to win a Super Bowl in Las Vegas, their former rival when the Raiders were in Oakland. I think it's going to be great. What's also crazy is this is by far and away the most expensive NFL Super Bowl for tickets. I'm sure you people all saw there was some clips going around about Lisa McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey's mom, talking about how they couldn't even afford to get a suite for the Super Bowl because the price was so expensive. And then I saw a recent report come out saying Christian McCaffrey's fiance, Olivia, bought a suite for Lisa McCaffrey's birthday. Now, if the picture I saw on Bleacher Report was actually real, that suite for 20 tickets, so aka 20 people, was $2.5 million, which is fucking insane. That's what it costs to watch a 3-hour football game for 20 people in a suite. Now, luxury suite, first time in Las Vegas. I know Las Vegas obviously plays a factor into that. But as a diehard football fan, let alone a diehard football fan with my team in the Super Bowl, It drives me absolutely nuts that ticket prices are so high for general tickets. I'm seeing 8,000 for like the bleachers and then 10 to 12,000 for still upper section, but a little bit better view. You're not in one side of the end zone. So for me, the people that don't make a dump truck load of money don't get to go to these games because the goddamn ticket prices are so expensive. And when we look at the suites, all of those are corporate companies schmoozing partners or potential partners. 90% of those suites that are reserved are done by companies so they can flex in front of partners and potential partners. And I'd be willing to bet, because I know one of the companies that booked 2 suites at the game, I'd be willing to bet that executive doesn't even fucking care about football, let alone, even if they do care about football, is really one of their teams the Chiefs or the Niners? If that is, that's fucking sick. More power to them that they can flex in a box and watch this game. But I just have a feeling not many of them are. It's just something cool to do. And again, it's just a flex. So side tangent there, but the game is outrageously expensive. Nonetheless, looking forward to the game here, and I cannot wait. Let's pivot to early predictions. My favorite people, a lot of the mainstream NFL media pundits, they've come out and said in early predictions, they're leaning with Kansas City, and it's because they've learned their lesson betting against Patrick Mahomes, similar to Tom Brady. Well, what's interesting is that the sports books are telling us something different. The lines came out. The 49ers are favored by 1.5 points. My guess, Kyle Shanahan doesn't really like that. I'm sure Andy Reid loves that. I believe Kyle Shanahan wishes that was reversed, because the Kansas City Chiefs are using that as bulletin board material, saying they're already betting against us. They're counting us out. And we know what Patrick Mahomes has done just in these playoffs when he comes in as the underdog. They fucking have dominated. So my guess, Kyle want that reversed. But what's interesting is that 73% of the money, of the public's money, is going to the Kansas City Chiefs. But now the line gives the Niners 2-point favorites. And even on some books like FanDuel, 2.5-point favorites. So what is going on? What do the books know? The public money coming in on the Chiefs, 73%, but yet the line is still going in the Niners' favor. So just something to keep your eye out on, depending on which way you guys want to bet. Keep that in mind as the game approaches here. So back to the early predictions with the pundits. I think psychology is off. I think when you just look at this game, you got Patrick Mahomes versus Brock Purdy. The 49ers barely beat the Green Bay Packers, and then they barely beat the Detroit Lions, though they came back in both, especially that sweet, sweet victory against the Detroit Lions, coming back from 17 points after half. I think that definitely plays a factor into it. I also think people initially thought there's no way the Chiefs are going in and beating the Bills in the divisional round. Well, they did. There's no way the Chiefs are going to go into Baltimore, the best team in the NFL, and win. And they fucking dominated. So that's playing a massive role in these early predictions that I'm seeing. But there is no question, this is going to be a massive test for the San Francisco 49ers defense. It's safe to say the 49ers have been fairly atrocious on defense in both the 2 playoff games, and they are getting a lot of questions around it. They're getting a shit ton of heat about it. A lot of clips showing people essentially giving up on the play. And I think that's a good thing. They're going to want to come out and make a fucking statement to the NFL that is not who we are. And it's going to give them a chip on their shoulder to come out and want to fucking dominate, which they're going to have to do. And because they've been getting so many questions about it, they're all short clips, but let's hear what Fred Warner, Kyle Shanahan, and John Lynch had to say when questioned by reporters about their lack of effort on the defensive side of the ball.
Great play with a ton of passion, and you can see it on the film. If you're watching that film and you see somebody going half speed or loafing, are you the kind of guy that gets in a guy's face and says, hey, that's unacceptable, that's not our standard?
I think it's the thing that is more meaningful than just trying to get on specific guys, I think, is being the guy that shows consistency and is the truest example of exactly what we're looking for. I can look at plays in this past game where I wasn't fully giving my 100% effort, and it's like, who am I to sit there and talk down on somebody else when I wasn't all the way there, you know what I'm saying? So I'm always trying to look at myself first in the mirror and make sure that I'm the example. Today when we're out there to practice, how do you look in practice right now? Like, how do I look, and what example am I giving to my guys for what we're trying to look like on Sunday? It's not just going to happen just because we talk about it. It's got to be something that you do day in and day out, and we have that opportunity today.
Watch that film against Detroit, and you watch that second quarter halfback toss to Gibbs. What did you think of the pursuit effort of your defensive lineman on that play, and is that in line with your culture here?
No, not at all. I mean, that's kind of what I was referring to on, I think, our conference call on Monday. But it's, and I know it looked bad on the clip that you guys have and stuff, but it's, no, it's not our culture. We don't want to have one play like that. I think we had about 2 to 3 in that game, which is too much for us. We don't want to ever have one, but it wasn't just the D-line. There was a few backside people who weren't going, and they're expecting someone else to make the tackle, and whenever you're expecting someone else to make the tackle, bad things happen.
Yesterday, Fred Warner and Kyle both talked about a concern about the lack of effort on the defense. Do you sense that there's an awareness about that going forward this year?
Yeah, effort's a non-negotiable. I mean, that's one of our core values, and I believe that in my heart of hearts. It's something. We've got 4 Hall of Famers that represent the defense I played in Tampa, and if you ask every one of us that played on that defense, what was our calling card? It starts with effort, and that being a non-negotiable. So those things have been addressed. We've got one game. I really would be shocked if we saw that again. And sometimes that comes. I mean, there's excuses for it. But they're just that. They're excuses, and that has to be non-negotiable. Play your heart out, and then we've got a lot of good players, a lot of good depth that you can get. So those aren't plays that we're proud of. Those players are proud of. It's been addressed, and I'd be real surprised if I saw it.
No. So I can't remember in recent history that the 49ers being this questioned about one particular side of the ball, specifically being undisciplined, lack of effort. And like John Lynch said, it's been addressed and it's going to be corrected. So again, I think I'm looking at this as a massive positive thing, because if there's one player I'm going to believe, it's going to be Fred Warner. And then, of course, hearing it from Kyle Shanahan, hearing it from the general manager, who is a Hall of Famer, who won a Super Bowl as a player, I think that is going to be a massive point of emphasis. It already probably has been. And again, they're going to show that they're not that group, and they're going to come in strong. Another good piece of news that came out was CEO of the San Francisco 49ers, Jed York. Don't really hear him talk. Jed York, he's had an interesting relationship with 49er fans. There was definitely, I can say it, there was definitely one moment in time where I did not like the guy. I thought he was kind of a doofus, really. Is that time when he fired 3 head coaches in a row. He was hiring Jim Tom Sula to be the head coach, but man, has he turned it around, and I give him nothing but respect and props for how he's let John and Kyle do their job. And he had a press conference the other day, and he told a story about Brock Purdy, specifically in 2022, his rookie year, and Kyle coming in and telling him, I know we got a $20 million quarterback in Jimmy G. I know we got a quarterback that we just gave up massive draft capital for in first-round picks for Trey Lance. But our third string, last pick of the draft, he's the dude. Let's hear what Jed York, CEO of the 49ers, had to say about that.
Joy about working with him the most.
I mean, like I said, his honesty, his directness, we haven't really talked much about Brock, but I mean, that's a good example of Kyle's directness. Last year in preseason, I think week 1 of training camp, which you have a quarterback that we're paying, I think, $20 million to. You have a guy that you drafted with investing 3 first-round picks into, and he grabs me after practice. He's like, hey man, we got to talk. And that's generally not a good thing when your coach tells you got to talk. Like, all right, what's up? And he's like, I think our third string quarterback's our best quarterback. I'm like, okay. I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, obviously, like, we've invested in Trey. Like, Trey's doing a good job. Like, we're going to do everything that we can. We're not going to change that. and we're not going to change the depth chart, but like, I think Brock will end up being our quarterback at some point. And like, he didn't force it, right? You had 2 injuries, and that's how Brock ended up playing. But he's always honest, even if it's not like, one thing that owners don't love to hear when they've invested money and or draft picks or both into people, that the last pick in the draft is the guy that we think is the best. That's generally not great news. But he's honest.
So what's fascinating about hearing that, now having hindsight into kind of behind the curtain of what happened with the 49ers, last year, that was a massive debate. A lot of people wanted to see Trey Lance. There were still definitely people in the Jimmy G crowd. And the best part about that is Kyle Shanahan said, look, I'm not going to stir any feathers. Okay. I'm not going to change the depth chart. I think that's an awesome snippet right there about really seeing the inner workings, that Kyle knew fairly quickly that Brock Purdy was the guy with the most potential. And yet Kyle Shanahan had also seen him the most limited amount when he talked to Jed about that. That is absolutely crazy. And it actually gives me even more confidence, even though Brock has already proven it in these games. That just gives, as a fan, even more confidence that Kyle Shanahan, when he's got around Brock Purdy for a few weeks, he already was going to the owner, already had a conversation with John Lynch, who came with him to talk to Jed, and said, Brock Purdy, he's someone that's going to be special. So that was a huge shout out and insight. And again, props to Jed to let them do what they needed to, because Kyle's proven himself. He knows what he's doing. And if Jed just sits back and lets Kyle and John do what they do, bring in the people they want, Jed York is now reaping the fruits of their decision-making and labor. So kudos to all those guys involved with that. And then the final thing about the San Francisco 49ers, Cam Newton back in the media talking about Brock Purdy. This is becoming somewhat common of Cam Newton to talk about Brock Purdy. And I think Cam Newton, he's not dumb. He knows it stirs the pot. He knows it gets a lot of clicks when he gives his opinion about Brock Purdy. And basically what he said, Brock Purdy is the 10th best player on the San Francisco 49ers. My thought to that is, who the fuck cares? It is an absolute fact. If Brock Purdy doesn't play good, the 49ers don't win games. It doesn't matter how good the defense is doing. If Brock Purdy doesn't play good, the 49ers don't win. And another question that someone would want to ask to Cam Newton, who is clearly a physical specimen. He went to the Super Bowl one year. Oh, and by the way, when he did go to the Super Bowl, he played fucking awful. They got roasted by the Denver Broncos.
Von Miller against Mike Rimmers one more time. Cam Newton didn't feel it, didn't step up. The football just taken out of his hand. Cam Newton decides not to dive in there. And
he backed away from it. He jumped away instead of jumping into the pile.
Yep, I guess he made a decision. It wasn't worth to go in there and get it. Should have dove in.
So I think there's honestly some envy there, that he's talking about Brock Purdy and the situation he's coming into and how many players he has around him. I think there's definitely a little envy in that. And again, what forgets to be mentioned is this is Brock's second year in the NFL. Brock Purdy learned this offense quickly. And what did he learn? And he says it all the time in press conferences. I just need to get this to my playmakers. Let them do the work. So he has to go out there, do his job, give it to his playmakers, and let them do the work, which is exactly what he's done. He's learned that quickly, and it helps when he can throw darts and just drop balls into keyholes and let his boys get some yak. But I think Cam Newton is still sour. He keeps moving the bar for Brock Purdy. And again, who really gives a fuck what his opinion is? But it's definitely going around like hotcakes out there. And I think he knew it would. And so that's why he's doing it. If I were to go back and look at Cam Newton, would he be the best player if his team in his second year got to a Super Bowl? I don't think so. Highly, highly doubtful. But yet, it's not something he did. So, again, I think there's a little bit of jealousy there. On the topic of Brock Purdy, some recent clips came out about the Chiefs talking about their upcoming matchup. Listening to the defensive coordinator, Spagnuolo, who's been in the NFL, who's been doing it a long time, there was a really good takeaway about Spags, the defensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, talking about Brock Purdy. Let's listen to that here.
But last year when you played the 49ers, they also had a different quarterback. What are your coaching points? What are you telling the guys about playing against this quarterback?
Yeah, all they got to do is put the tape on, Adam, in my opinion. We had some crossover film during the course of the year, but when you dive into it and you watch them, you don't. It's not a quarterback that's managing or all those tabs that they put on. He's for real. Makes all the throws. Really, really smart. And then what I didn't know, because I'm not seeing enough of it, is how athletic he is. I mean, this is another quarterback that when you cover everything back there and he finds a lane in a pass rush line, can take off. He did it last week. He's done it in every playoff game and gets positive yards. That puts a lot of strain on us defensively. Thoroughly impressed with him.
Now, as much as Brock Purdy has become a polarizing topic, which is still baffling to me, people like Spags, who's been in the NFL, gone against hundreds of quarterbacks in his time, his words mean something. A guy who's currently doing it as a defensive coordinator, his one job is to make the 49ers offense as hard as humanly possible. Had something to say like that. I love it. And again, just another notch in the belt for Brock Purdy, that he's the truth and the real fucking deal. And then finally, other NFL news that I just seen hit the wire. A couple things have been a few days old, but wouldn't be right without saying Jim Harbaugh, former 49ers coach, takes the Los Angeles Chargers job. That's going to be super fun to watch. That makes the Chargers relevant. Again, they got a bunch of studs on that team, but their last coach, Brandon Staley, was always a fucking fluke to me. He was cheesy. I never bought into what that guy was preaching. He just seemed fake. He didn't seem authentic. So we'll see what happens to Brandon Staley and see if he can land a job. But Jim Harbaugh, I'm super fired up for him to be back in the league. And then finally, one of the most surprising pieces so far this offseason, Bill Belichick, Mike Vrabel, and Pete Carroll. There's no more head coaching vacancies. Those three coaches, specifically one of the best coaches of all time in Bill Belichick, is probably the most surprising. But Vrabel took the Titans to a #1 seed, AFC Championship game, and then Pete Carroll, Super Bowl winning coach, doesn't get a job. So the NFL, it's a merciless business, but there's always so many good stories coming out from it, which is why I absolutely love it. It's a movie. It's a movie at all times. So I will be back to give a breakdown of advantages, disadvantages of this upcoming Super Bowl as it gets closer. Until then, like, comment, subscribe, hit me up. Go Niners. Peace.
Pick it up, pick it up.